Welcome to Smart Conserver.
I had the wind turbine for a while and I had done a pre-installation video for you. The difficulty I had why it wasn't installed a long time ago was the acquisition of the batteries. Anyway, I have everything now, so I will guide you through the installation I had and guide you through it and tell you what it is that I did. And by the way, please, what I have is not a windmill. There is a difference between windmills and wind turbines. Wind turbines uses the wind to generate electricity, while windmill uses that same wind to pump water or for the grinding of grains. So both uses the wind, but the results are different. So please don't get them confused. I will tell you about the installation of the wind turbine in this vlog. So the wind turbine was purchased online and it was a 5-blade, 5,000 watts, 12 volt wind turbine. The wind turbine that I purchased was needed to set up. I needed to set up an off-grid system. So I purchased one that came with its own charge controller. I can't say if the others that you see online has its own charge controller or you would need to purchase a charge controller differently. But if you decide to purchase a wind turbine online, please check it out and see what it includes, what you get with it. Now, to set up an off-grid system with this wind turbine that I purchased, I needed some additional pieces, some additional items for this installation to be completed. Well, I needed a length of galvanized pipe, and the galvanized pipe, it normally comes in a standard 20 feet. This you can purchase at any hardware. I must tell you that when I was trying to get this galvanized pipe, I called many hardware, and the prices, they vary significantly. It was such a vast difference that I had to look the cheapest price when I was quoted. I went there and I must say that the cheapest price that I was quoted, it was the best quality of all. So much so that I was commended by various workmen for making that choice. Additional thing that was needed was, it was called a pole adapter flange, and this is required to affix the wind turbine to the galvanized pipe so that it holds it in place when it is in the galvanized pipe. Now, this is also sold online. However, the issue that I fear was if I purchase it online, it may not fit the galvanized pipe that I had already purchased. So I got a reliable welder to just make it. I just showed him the picture and he looked at the pipe, which I wanted it to fit, and he did the job perfectly. He had to make a clamp as well so that the pipe could be affixed to the wall. There are other small items that were required, like 10 gauge wire, and you need that to the desired length. This was relatively easy to acquire, but I must say that the prices vary, so you need to shop around. You also need cable ties, and being that only a few is required, this I already have, so I didn't need to buy. Cable clips, on the other hand, I needed, and it was needed for the size of the cable. I really couldn't get it to match the cable, but the biggest one that I got, it worked. The battery and the inverter now, I didn't mention these as additional pieces as these were separate and apart from the wind turbine. I will tell you about that later in the vlog. The charge controller that came with the wind turbine, it had 5 extended wires, 3 of them yellow in color and 1 black and 1 red in color. The 3 yellow wires were tested to see if one of them was tied to grounds. It was thought that this wind turbine was 3-phased, but It was not. This was tested multiple times to ensure that no errors were made. The three yellow wires, these were extended by the 10 gauge wires, and they were soldered neatly to the wires that was on the wind turbine. Now, after soldering the wires, the sleeves were placed over the exposed wires and they were shrink wrapped using a heat gun. The three wires were placed in the galvanized pipe where these would exit the galvanized pipe. The pipe was set in an area where it was to be placed, setting it against the cantilever and on the ground. All this was done to mark the area where the pipe would meet the ground, and that area it was drilled and dug out. Where the galvanized pipe would set against the cantilever, that was drilled to prepare it to be clamped on the cantilever for it to be secured. The area where the wires would exit the galvanized pipe, it was also marked and cut. You know, I wondered why they never really drilled a big enough hole in the pipe instead of cutting the section of the pipe. You can ask if whenever you're doing this type of installation. While the pipe was on the ground, the flange and the wind turbine was affixed, and it was fastly secured by tightening the nuts and the bolt. Then, while on the roof, the pipe and the wind turbine was slightly leaned, and the 5 blades were attached and tightened. All of this was done using the tools that came with the wind turbine. The manufacturers were good enough to give you all the necessary tools for really tightening those bolts and screws which came with the wind turbine. If you really think about it, it was a great thing to include these tools and bolts, as it really prevents you from finding the bolts that you needed that had the required strength to hold the wind turbine. The cap was placed over the bolts where the blades were secured. A hole, on the other hand, was drilled right through the wall in order to accommodate the wires which would lead from the battery to the 1500 watt inverter. The inverter, on the other hand, now it came with its own wires for a battery connection, and with these wires, they were connected to the inverter, and the inverter was neatly affixed to the wall. It was now time to connect all 4 wires to the battery. The wires I'm speaking of is the red and black wire which came from the charge controller which leads to the wind turbine, and the red and black wire which came from the inverter itself. With all the wires clamped on, everything was ready to be used. The 1500 watt inverter was set up on the 5000 watt wind turbine. All of that was installed. So now I will be sure to let you know how it worked, what I'm using it for, and please, I can't go through all of that on this vlog. So hear what? On the next vlog, I will tell you all about it. I will, man, just wait.
You have come to the end of another series. Join us next time for more ways to conserve.